Good afternoon, members. When we were debating the St. Jude reconstruction project motion. Member of Castries Southeast.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Let me say good afternoon to you and to our colleague parliamentarians, and to thank you for this sumptuous meal we had this afternoon. But also to grant me leave, Mr. Speaker, to convey condolences to Mr. Matthew Augustine from Badney, who passed away at 105. Also, Dedet, some time ago, I referred to her birthday. She is over 100 plus, but she passed away last night. And a good friend, I think well known by the member for Strozel, Serafina Stephen, who passed away in Tuapito a few weeks ago. Mr. Speaker, I do recognize that the family for Serafina being quite young is mourning. And I know the family for Dedet and Mr. Matthew, both in Badney and Coolitown, of course, would be celebrating the life of those two centurions, and I will join them in that celebration. For the substantive reason being here and rising to speak, Mr. Speaker, I wish to add my voice in support of the motion that is before us, that the Parliament of St. Lucia acknowledges receipt of the report of the St. Jude Hospital Reconstruction Project, that the Parliament of St. Lucia do advise the Cabinet of Ministers to consider and approve the recommendations presented, that the Parliament of St. Lucia do advise the Cabinet of Ministers to explore other opportunities for the St. Jude Hospital site, and that we express the Cabinet. The Parliament expresses its profound gratitude to the doctors, nurses, staff, and patients for their contribution, dedication, patience, and commitment over the years. Mr. Speaker, notwithstanding what some of us may think as it relates to the relevance or timeliness of this motion, it may be noteworthy to consider that we may never exhaust all there is in the St. Jude Hospital reconstruction project. But there is much to learn from this project experience, and of course which would provide pertinent guidance for similar project undertakings. It is my hope, Mr. Speaker, that students pursuing studies in project management, construction management, civil engineering, quantity surveying, and other related fields continue to investigate through educational research so that they can build on the body of knowledge associated with project implementation in SEED, Small Island Developing States. Mr. Speaker, there is a plethora of documented information on many failed projects, public sector projects. Therefore, we should not be afraid to speak to St. Lucians about any problematic project. St. Lucians have a right to know, and the children need to know what happened. And just for context, Mr. Speaker, let me share with you a very, very brief on a failed project somewhere else in another part of the world. And let me reference the Calim.com, a project in the UK referred to as the Garden Bridge Trust. The project It's a design and construction, April 2017. Cost, £53 million. And of course, it's documented this way. New York has its High Line, Seoul has its Sky Garden, Paris has its Promenade Plantée, London nearly had its Garden Bridge. Elevated, elongated city parks are a draw for both tourists and locals alike. An oasis in the urban jungle, these parks are both practical ways of getting around places of serenity. Based on a proposal first put forth in the 1990s by actress Joanna Lumley, the Garden Bridge was to be a footbridge over the River Thames in central London, linking Lambeth to south with the Victoria Embankment on the north. The bridge was to be a garden, a footbridge, a tourist attraction, a breath of fresh air in the midst of the hub that is London. Although the proposal struggled to gain attraction when first proposed, the project received renewed interest in 2012-2013 by Boris Johnson, the then mayor of London and now Prime Minister. He picked up the idea. Despite there already being two bridges in the immediate vicinity, the Garden Bridge was a unique proposal and could well have been a vibrant contribution to the fabric of the city had things gone according to plan. Unfortunately, that is not what happened. A 2017 review commissioned by Boris Johnson's successor, Sadiq Khan, revealed a shaky financial foundation, and the project was cancelled before the first piling was driven. Despite politics and finger-pointing between Johnson and Khan, the seeds of the problems had reportedly been sown long before Khan took office. Perhaps the most significant issue from a project management perspective was the failure to establish a clear vision. Although it is a nice idea, nice isn't good enough when you're about to spend millions of pounds. The press did indicate that the contributing factors were unclear vision, unsound business case, project governance and financing problems, failure to engage key stakeholders, leading to the lack of stakeholders' support. Mr. Speaker, I have read about many problematic projects, and some of them are either cancelled or continued. But it is a very strange occurrence to discontinue a project, the nature of which is before us today. The project existed on a site for many, many years. The project was never earmarked to be demolished. There was a fire, and of course, a project of such value, emotional attachment, one would have expected, even without a fire, a government would look for the restoration and upkeep of such a project. Far less to think of demolition of a project. The account of St. Jude Hospital reconstruction is a project which lost its track between 2016 to 2020. Here is my account of what happened. And I will provide you with statements made by officials of the government in a chronological manner, and you will conclude that my assessment is reasonable. So, this is where I start. Somewhere between midnight of September 8th to September 9th, fire broke out at the St. Jude Hospital in Vieux-Fort. In 2011, the SLP returned to power and continued the project. St. Jude is approximately 140,000 to 160,000 square foot, designed for 90 beds. Approximately $98 million was spent, and approximately $30 million was estimated to complete the structure. There were 20 containers of materials and other forms of supplies around. The government had in its coffers approximately $27 million then. But this didn't happen. So here was a statement by the then Prime Minister on December 9th, 2009. My colleague sitting next to me, the then Prime Minister, and I quote, "Over the last 5 weeks, we have made significant strides towards the attainment of our vision for the reconstruction modernization of St. Jude Hospital. In October, government received a technical delegation from Taiwan, which presented a master plan for St. Jude Hospital. This plan was subjected to rigorous review by the St. Jude Hospital Task Force, and very shortly, detailed technical specification will be completed. Government will spare no effort to start the rebuilding process early in the new year. I must take this opportunity to publicly thank the Taiwanese government for the technical and other assistance which they have provided thus far. Government is hopeful that the first phase of the new St. Jude Hospital will be completed within a period of 18 months. This statement was made on the 9th of December 2009 by the then Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, I want to take 2009 to 2016 because there's an audit report that captured, which was commissioned by the government at the time. And the first thing that was established, that the project cost was okay. And I need to reference this. Mr. Speaker, I noticed and I followed the discussion on St. Jude during that time. And there was an attempt for gaslighting. So if you listen to Joe Public, if you listen to the average St. Lucians, they were saying, why did we spend so much money? And so much money is relative. They were not talking about, is it adequate? Is it too much? But the perception given that there was massive wastage between 2009 and 2016, because $98 million was spent. But nobody gave clearance, nobody gave guidance, no one decided to educate Joe Public as to what was happening. And that is why I've always criticized the professional bodies out there, the quantity and valuation surveyors, the Architects Association. Nobody did. So the St. Lucian public was left at the mercy of politicians on information that was highly technical. But Mr. Speaker, I am blessed because St. Lucia invested in me and sent me to school. So I happen to be a quantity surveyor, and I did my first degree and my master's in quantity surveying. And I did lecture at Sir Louis part-time doing cost estimating for some time. So I was able to do some comparative analysis as to what was going on. So in basic QS terms, what you do, you look at other hospitals. So I took Owen King, being 109 beds, approximately 151,000 square foot. It was working out at a cost per square foot of $1,158.94. $1,158. Owen King. Let us take a hospital in Trinidad, Arima. This hospital was 110 beds, 280,000 square foot at $1,964 per square foot. There is also a Point 14 hospital in Trinidad, a gross floor area of 175,000 square foot. The cost per square foot was $3,800, almost 4,000 square foot. There was a U.S. Las Vegas hospital at $995 per square foot. There was a U.S. hospital I considered. EC, I'm looking at EC. EC. $1,556 per square foot. When I looked at Tapio extension, I was not surprised that it was within range. It was only $866 per square foot. 800. To complete St. Jude Hospital at the time, it was working at only $866.67 per square foot. That was instructive because you want to know whether you're receiving value for money. How do you know if you're receiving value for money? It's to do a comparative analysis. If somebody is building your house and they charge you a certain price and you're uncomfortable, you go and ask your neighbor and your friends, how much did they charge you for this? How much did they charge you? So that you could get comfort that you're getting money for value for money. Mr. Speaker, I'm sure that is reasonable. But one of the things I did during that time, a trajectory of the new St. Jude Hospital was working out at $3,375 per square foot. And based on the comparative analysis I was doing, it would have been one of the most expensive hospitals I came across at $270 million. And the square foot, and the bed count was just 90 beds. So the box per square foot based on trajectory would have been far more expensive than the Point 14 hospital in Trinidad. So one of the things I believe that you should not do in politics is to gaslight or to cause siren, cause concern, or you're unsettling the public and you have no expertise in the field. You're not a doctor, but you're the first one crying about COVID. You're not an engineer, but you're suggesting a bridge would fail. But let me go on a little further. So the first thing I became comfortable with, that there was nothing wrong with the cost of St. Jude as a reconstruction project after a fire. Because I worked on the fire component of the L block when it got burnt. The L block of Victoria Hospital. I worked on it. And I know the cost. And I know the fact that we had to carefully remove the asbestos roofs. I know the process involved. And construction, that type of construction activity takes time. But more importantly, Mr. Speaker, if you fast forward to the Minister of Health in June 2016, the then Minister of Health, when the government just took office, it was on the 22nd of June that the Minister of Health commented on St. Jude. And what the minister said then, the Honorable Senator Mary Isaac, I visited St. Jude. There's a lot of work. That was her account. However, she qualified by saying, but I find it taking a lot of time. And everything that I'm going to say here today in terms of quoting former ministers is going to be factual because I have the recordings where they spoke in the news, so you could verify it. She said, I saw a lot of work. She was overwhelmed with the amount of work done at St. Jude at the time. But she concerned herself with time. So what about time taken? Project duration is influenced by the availability of funds. What I noted with the St. Jude arrangement, that the contract arrangement avoided prolongation costs. So they had a contract arrangement where the contractor was not allowed to make claims for extension of time, so to speak, because all of the funds was not available. And as explained by both the Prime Minister and the Senior Minister, clearly the funds to implement that St. Jude project was not available in one go. So they were working towards mobilizing funds while work was going on because they were responding to a crisis. June, July, August, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, on the 14th of August, the handover report was submitted to the then government. And I did speak with the managers. I wanted to know what time did they give this. But on the 15th of August, the very day, the Minister of Economic Affairs stated, and I quote, and it's in the media, "We requested of the consultant who was on the project to hand over all documents to the government. As I speak to you today, we have not received a completed set of drawings that have been approved. And I don't know how you are going to finish." I can't say it in his style. You know, I don't know how you're going to finish if you don't have plans. It's, Guy Joseph, it seemed that we were given a 6 for a 9. This was on the 15th of August. But notice on the 14th of August, the handover report was given. On the 14th. But on the 15th in the news, the minister was careful to say, "I did not receive all approved drawings." But if you just suppose that by the account of the senior minister as to what information was available, you would start to see what is happening. The minister is speaking very carefully as to what is available and what is not available. Of course, they may have not been approved drawings, but they were drawings. And there was a lot of information given, and I will come to that shortly. But let us roll over, and you'll see how this thing is unfolding. September, we move to September 16th. This is where an audit was commissioned. And, of course, in the news, the minister was asked, "Why didn't you tender for the audit?" The minister in the news said, "Because St. Jude is a pressing matter. And if you ask me," and this is what he said, if you ask why was this not advertised, was it advertised? I would say no. He said St. Jude was a pressing issue and need to be completed. Therefore, time is of the essence. That statement was made in September for the award of the contract for the audit. Mr. Speaker, just part of the terms of reference I want you to consider. 1 month after the commencement of the audit, the consultant shall submit a report on the state of development of the project, including preliminary observations on the status and quality of the works, detail of procurement as it relates to material and equipment in storage, status of nominated subcontractors, opinion regarding execution of the supervision of the contract. The report should also provide feedback on the work methods, the work plan of the supervision consultant, and provide guidance on the way forward regarding which nominated subcontractors can continue and which one should be terminated. This was the terms and conditions of the audit. But this is what happened. In October, the minister went in the news. The minister said in October, I was awaiting the appointment of the new AG, which has happened, and have had discussions with the AG on the matter. Because one thing I must tell people of St. Lucia, it is one thing that I take seriously, what has happened at St. Jude. It is one of the worst projects ever implemented, and the records will determine whether this is true or not. And I intend to go the full distance to hold those responsible accountable. This is on October the 16th. And I paid attention and I said, but why would the minister speak of the Attorney General in October when the contract for the audit was in September? Because he also indicated in the news that things are worse than he thought. And what was so bad that caused him to make that statement? Because they discovered, and he said he discovered an extra 10 containers of materials. 10 Mr. Speaker, that one to me is laughable. If somebody is building a house for me and I'm overseas, when I return to do an account of what work the person has done, I'm not satisfied. But in the process of accounting, I'm depressed and I discover they have 10 containers of materials on the side. I should be happy. In other words, the minister in that report indicated that there were 20 containers of materials, not 10. And that was concerning. But the disappointment started to take place. And that disappointment, by January 2017, there was a disappointment. The disappointment was the report was leaked. And when the minister was asked about the leaked report, the report that was projecting to take down, to hold those accountable, the minister said in the news that there are persons in the public service who's trying to destabilize the government. This was exactly what he said in the news. Ask him whether, and that they will take action to resolve this matter. The report was leaked. But he also used the opportunity to show on television the volumes. The volumes, 3 sets, I think I saw on television almost 3 sets of documents, really compiled. And when you fold the drawings and you put them in and you package them and you compile them, they look like a thick sort of thing. So they're drawings. There was the actual report. All of that was featured on television. What was provided by the consultant? And I was telling my colleague, member for Strozel, that I was surprised that he had not seen it, because it was a significant show on television when the audit report came in. The report that was supposed to say everything about St. Jude. But why was the report hidden? Why was the report concealed? Why all of the hype from June, from July, August, and the fact that he had already spoken to the Attorney General? Why all of the hype died when the report came in? Well, the report said a lot of things. But there was one section of the report that I made reference to since when I was in opposition in the Senate. The report that was commissioned highlighted that the works is invaluable and salvageable. But more importantly, the auditor subjected the work of St. Jude to the following: ICC International Building Code of 2015, ICC International Building Fire Code of 2015, ICC International Existing Building Code of 2015, ICC International Energy Code of 2015, FGI Guidelines for Design and Constructions of Hospitals and Outpatient Facilities 2014, and WHO Hospital Safety Index Guide for Evaluators, 2nd edition 2015. So the audit did not just make a statement. The auditors made the statement to say that we do see great value present in the works completed. And Mr. Speaker, when an engineer going to say in a report that I see great value, that cannot be taken lightly in the context of an engineering report. Great value is used when something is exceptionally good, because it is good enough to pay a contractor to say the value of work is okay, is X amount. But the engineer did not say the work is valuable. The report said, I see great value present in the works completed to date, and believe that the project is salvageable and could be converted into a facility that can properly serve the needs of St. Lucia. Mr. Speaker, this statement in the report, in the audit report, may have led to this report being concealed. But in March 9th, so after the report was revealed, things got quiet. Nothing was happening. Nothing was happening on St. Jude. But somebody somebody from St. Jude decided to speak on St. Jude in the news to all St. Lucians, and this person was the chairman, Dr. Mondesi. He said, and I quote, "I saw ego, political misinformation and mismanagement, and that there has to be a moment in life of a politician when his conscience must take over his love for power. He has to prioritize healthcare." This was Dr. Mondesi commenting on March 9, 2017. He described the situation, but there was a reaction, and I was following the reaction. So what happened after Dr. Mondesi said this? April 5th, 2017, St. Jude Hospital Project Office and the audit team said they will recommence work on St. Jude soon. They will reduce the bed count to 75. In fact, the then minister indicated that he had contacted General Electric and they would make themselves available in St. Lucia the following week. And work started there seemed to be a movement because the chairman of St. Jude Hospital had described the politicians or the persons leading as egoistic and misinformation. Mr. Speaker, I concur with this because all during my observation of what was happening, I didn't hear a professional for once on the then government to speak on St. Jude. I didn't hear a quantity surveyor. I never heard of an engineer. I did not hear the people who could speak on St. Jude speak. There was only one person speaking. The Minister of Health spoke very early after elections and she never said a thing about St. Jude. But later on she would speak again. It was in September 27, 2017, for the first time an engineer spoke on the government side. And on that day, they intimated that things are not too good. The corridors have problems. They started bringing in the idea that St. Jude is not altogether there. And by May 20th, then the then Minister for Economic Affairs said that the way forward with St. Jude, he will tell the public that the Prime Minister is out of the island and they must await his return. But he will give them a snippet of what to come. And he spoke about almost in bringing the conversation that this hospital, St. Jude, is not good. And the idea of demolition, a new hospital start to creep in. Mr. Speaker, by September of 2017, at the entrance of this parliament, the Minister of Health was speaking for the second time. And she said, that is a new hospital that's coming. The one who was quiet from the time they won the election spoke only then and indicated that it's a new hospital. So, Mr. Speaker, you could actually see what led to the discussion about a new hospital and the abandonment of what actually started. But, Mr. Speaker, I need to subscribe to the idea that expertise is the fuel that powers project success. Expertise. And I think it is one thing that all politicians, whether you were there before, whether you're there now, or whether you'll come in the future, any public sector project is expertise that will fuel the success of any project. And anytime, especially in a small island developing state, the person who is leading a complex project like a hospital, a bridge, a road, is a politician with no background expertise. And even if he has expertise, as Prime Minister would always remind me that I'm not sitting in cabinet as a quantity surveyor, I'm a parliamentarian, you know, and I'm not here to so much advise as to engineering solutions. It is important that politicians must subscribe to the notion that expertise, and that is why we put in our people first. That is why we believe in educating our people. That is why we believe in transparency. That is why we are discussing it. That those who are going to come after understand the mistakes that was made and not to repeat it. But, Mr. Speaker, I find that it is brazen and bold in the context of St. Jude Hospital to have taken this route in the so-called box. Mr. Speaker, the trajectory of the box would be the most expensive hospital in the region. In fact, the trajectory of the box is 3 times the cost of OKEU per square foot. 3 times. You are about to spend 3 times the amount of money you spend to build OKEU on the box. Mr. Speaker, I'm an emotional person, and I think senior minister, the former prime ministers have said to me, Joachim, you're too emotional, you know, but my nature is that I'm an emotional person, and I accept that. Mr. Speaker, I sat in Viewfort by the fisheries complex, and I almost broke down. Why? Because there was no need for us to embark on what we did. Mr. Speaker, I can imagine the conversation taking place between professionals who are trying to save the government from the embarrassment of St. Jude. One of the first things that they would have said, we need to look for speed. Speed of construction. They would come to you and say, Minister, you're in a situation there, you spend 3 years without doing St. Jude, you need a hospital, I don't think you can complete this, so you need to move fast. Of course, in most technological books, the fastest form of construction is frame construction, steel frame, regular frame, a box. It is said to be very fast because you put a crane, you set up the pad foundation, put up the steel, pour some concrete at the top, put some external cladding, and you have a building. That is easy if you're building a warehouse. That is easy if you're building a car park. That is easy if you're building a factory shell to store goods. The person who advised you on a steel frame for a hospital could not be a hospital architect. Must have been just a civil engineer. And that is why one of the things that in this country we need to be careful of. There are some professionals, they believe that they have expertise in everything government wants to do, must consider. Everything. But there's a difference. We live in a world of specialization, and there is a difference between a dentist and a gynecologist. Both of them are doctors. There's a difference between a structural engineer and a civil engineer. There's a difference between a general architect and a hospital architect. Mr. Speaker, when I visited this building, what these people did, they closed their eyes and they poured concrete. They did not have the plans for services, so they said, and of course Minister for Central would be able to read, they said, forget about the conduits for now. Forget about the plumbing. We do not have those plans. And the electrical. All we will do, we will pour the concrete. And then we will buy a special drill that can cut through concrete to prepare the holes. And I took one of those concrete cones that came out of that special, and I have it in my office to use to have paper down. Because I'd never seen a concrete cone come out that way, as if it was somebody pour a cone of concrete. So that drill can cut through the concrete and bore a hole and leave a perfect hole. This is what they did, because they had no plans for services. None. When I saw that, I said to this engineer on site, Mr. Speaker, what that you're doing? He said to me, Man Joachim, don't ask me, I just working. I said, that you're doing? You know, what hurt me even more, Mr. Speaker, you could go on top of the concrete roof now. And the Prime Minister is correct. Because when he said there was no roof, I said, but wait. The first thing they did is to build a roof before they build the floor. So why there's no roof? There was no ground floor, Mr. Speaker, but they had completed a concrete roof. But what they did to drain rainwater from the concrete roof, they put pipes in the columns from the roof and to go down. But I find the pipes were too small. I say any lift would block that concrete roof, and then you'd have water flowing inside of the building because the pipes are so small. The minister said I said to the guy, but that thickness of concrete, you must have poured concrete all night. He said, well, that's a helipad for helicopters to land. I said, boy, these people went to work. They went to town to shop because everybody else went to sleep. The architects sleeping, engineers in St. Lucia sleeping, St. Lucians gobble up anything St. Lucians say. So in St. Lucia, when you're a politician, you're a gynecologist, you are a dentist, you are a civil engineer, you're doing aviation, you are everything.
You see the right guy, no color.
Yeah, well, they know, yes. And this is dangerous for St. Lucia. So through this process, of course, no wonder and Mr. Speaker, hotels and hospitals and similar type specialized buildings, when you build the frame, when I say the frame, I'm talking about the walls, the floor, and the roof, you're about 50% in cost. You see the services? The services are so expensive. You see finishes? Mr. Speaker, that's expensive. Because you could take a trowel and throw all of the mortar on that wall. But you see the edges? When you come to finishing the edges, that takes time. So the housewife comes and she sees that the walls are up. She sees that the roof is up. But she, in 3 months, but why 2 months you're still working on the house? But she said the main structure is up. Well, a hospital is 10 times more. Because not only plumbing you have to put in, and the plumbing for a hospital is very complex. You need to know where you're going to get the waste from the surgical wards and where you are having surgery. Where is all of that mass of waste going to? Where are you going to do this? You do not take waste after surgery and run it through a septic tank. You've made no provision on site as to where you're going to dispose of that. You've made no provision for medical gas installation. Where are you running it? Is it going to be concealed? Is it going to be surfaced? I know the British love to surface their medical gas lines. They believe that the medical gas lines are so important for surgery, they like to see it. So if there's a leak, they could run and fix it. The French say, no, conceal it because there's no space for it to collect bacteria because they want a very sterile surgical room. Who are you ordering your surgical instrument from? Because if you are ordering from the French, you would want to design following the French approach. But the doctor said there was no consultation with them to know anything that's going on because somebody who is a medical gas expert decided on this, is going to decide on this. Mr. Speaker, this, for me, you know, like I've said, that I have read on many failed projects. The Titanic was a failed project. The Voyage was a failed one because it sank. And there are so many failed projects. If you love engineering, you could just go online and go on kalim.com and read about failed projects. You understand? But when you're a small island development state, when you're an island with a population like ours, with all of those fiscal challenges, you cannot. No government. You could play politics on anything you want to, not on a project costing hundreds of millions of dollars. Not a project that can, you know, cause us that our debt to GDP, you know, can take us to the IMF. And what about the nature of the project? It's a caring project. We allow for an individual to take the entire country down this road. Mr. Speaker, when I visited the box, there were a lot of steel frame, not steel frame, I call them, these are the aluminum metal, they're supposed to be studs, aluminum studs, because they plan to have drywall partitions in the entire hospital. In fact, in my entire life, I've been to Home Depot in the US, I've never seen drywall in my entire life like I saw up there. Serious. I was saying, wow, that's the largest quantity of drywall. I don't know how they ship drywall to St. Lucia like that. In fact, there's enough drywall to do a drywall bridge from here to Manwick. I saw it a lot and I said, wow, drywall, drywall. Mr. Speaker, with all of the problems we have with mold in St. Lucia, some of it that is a challenge to government, a challenge to a number of private sector people. We build a wall, a concrete wall, external cladding, and we're going to put a metal cladding and we're going to put drywall. When the moisture from coming on the outside and you have the other environment on the inside, that space between the patient and that wall is one where you have mold. The most dangerous condition for a patient, that cannot be a solution to a hospital. Where we have external cladding being used, there isn't that other membrane on the inside. Why you want to do St. Lucians that with the most expensive hospital in the region at 3,300 per square foot when OKU is 1/4 the price? Why would you want to do this? And what is hurtful, Mr. Speaker, and I will tell all of my colleagues who are quantity surveyors and engineers, not one of them went into the media and commented on what was being done. Good governance is a major contributor that will affect us in small island development states. It is a major concern. But it brings to focus the role of the press, professional and government officials. Any one of those pillars, you tend to lack good governance. So the government relationship with professionals, the government relationship with the press is significant, and the role of public officials. I must say that the press participated profusely. They asked questions, and I'm happy that there's a prime minister You know, he may not, he says that, I may not like what they say, but their role, and he respects them. He brings them up to on the 5th floor, and he tell them, and he tell us, go and answer their questions. You know? Go and answer their questions. Not minutes he say, I did not invite you there, you came. But he sets the principle of good governance that if you want transparency, the government must have a relationship with the press. But the other pillar that is important, and that is why if you go to Kalim.com, you could get all sorts of failed projects in the world executed, whether it's the UK and Canada, because they are professionals.
Member of Castries office, you have 10 minutes left.
Oh, thank you. That's just too much. Yes, I'm running out. That's too much. You know, yes. They actually, these people would bring things to the front. Of course, a lot of us can benefit from it. Mr. Speaker, the 101 causes of failed project: goal and vision, leadership and good governance. Failure to establish governance structure appropriate to the needs of a project is a classic mistake award for winning any championship. One difficulty. Failure to identify and engage stakeholders, another major one. It shouldn't take for Dr. Mondesi to get to the news, and in the way that he did, speak to politicians that have been egoistic and speak of misinformation on the part of St. Jude. He really laid a dagger in the heart of the government at the time to say, look here, misinformation. And I concur, because there was gaslighting when we spoke about St. Jude very early. And I was asking the Senate not to discuss St. Jude because both governments have failed. I said no. I said no, I didn't believe it, and I do not believe it now from a professional standpoint. And I'm not saying that the episode of St. Jude between 2009 and 2016 was without concerns. Of course, all projects have project management issues. That's the nature of construction project. There are rigors, and that's why you are trained to get involved. The solutions do not come easy. But what happened when we start to tell the population, they're wasting the money, they're wasting the money, 98 million. You do not say there's only $60 million in the work and $48 million in materials. Containers stored. And then you said, but the materials were not on St. Jude site. Is that uncommon? Isn't there a clause in the contract to have materials paid for that's stored away from site? Because not all materials that can be stored on site based on the nature of the materials. And of course, we know that the manager must receive the invoices and the place where it's stored to include it in the certificate. And the contractor is paid for materials stored off-site. Is that uncommon? That's practices as old as JCT 63, Joint Consultative Contract. But we gaslight St. Lucians and made them believe that everything was so wrong. And then behind that, see what was happening. We were able to introduce the new box because St. Lucians convinced what we were doing was incorrect. What this Prime Minister started was incorrect. What the next Prime Minister continued was incorrect. Here's the solution, the box. That would become the most expensive hospital, and up to now, far from completion. And I agree, Mr. Speaker, if you have to complete the box as a hospital, from a professional standpoint, it would cost over $100 million. Because of the cost of services for a hospital, medical gases are not there, plumbing not there, electrical not there, ceiling not there, painting not there. In fact, all you have, you could say, is the ground. It's the ground. The drywall is packed in a corner and some claddings. That, what they were hoping to achieve is speed. Speed. But even with a project that's supposed to give you a hospital in record time, they failed. They failed. The trick did not work, and I said it was divine intervention.
That's why they have to be looking at that.
Even the box failed, and the box is the fastest, simple construction. All they could have done was to take the 20 containers of material, the $27 on the account, and the people of St. Jude would have had a hospital. Of course, you could have given political blows for it. But guess what? They would have been out of the stadium. They would have been out of the stadium. There was no need to do this. And I do hope, Mr. Speaker, in closing, that my exposition on this is not for political gain or to itch any political carvings in anywhere in this house, but for the professionals who are listening and the students who will come before, and those who want to embark on public sector project implementation, those who want to embark on project management or any one of those related fields, to go in detail and study this carefully. And they would have discovered the 101 principles of project management in the public sector. I thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, each one of you.
The member for Dennery South.
Mr. Speaker, I rise in support of this motion to discuss the St. Jude's Hospital Reconstruction Project. But before doing that, Mr. Speaker, I always want to take a moment to thank the people of Dennery South for placing their trust and confidence in me to allow me to stand in this honorable house, Mr. Speaker, to make representation on their behalf. Mr. Speaker, this hospital project started under the leadership of the Prime Minister, Honorable Stephen King, way back in 2010. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister's vision and enthusiasm were echoed in his pronouncement at the launching ceremony held on Thursday, 9th September 2010, where he affirmed that out of the ashes, a phoenix will rise. Mr. Speaker, at the time, he indicated that, and I quote from the Nation's Review, number 15 of Saturday, September 11, 2010, where he stated, following months of deliberations on consideration of various options, the government has decided on a well thought out and forward-looking plan which considers the current challenges and futuristic demands. Mr. Speaker, a man who had a vision, a man who had a plan to give the people of St. Lucia a very, very, very important facility. Unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, after 13 years...
Member for Dennery South, apparently there was a power surge and they are trying to rectify the recording system, so if you just pause a while.
Mr. Speaker. I can wait.
The power is in.